think that there are some ideas in the crypto ecosystem which are good ideas that have been poorly executed or executed in an immature fashion that has been counterproductive. So let's talk about the good ideas. The good idea is a digital commodity that is an asset without an issuer. Bitcoin is the greatest execution of the idea of a digital commodity because it is not just a commodity, it's a scarcity. It's an asset without an issuer that's absolutely capped. The second, and it has a role, right, as a long-term store of value or as a base layer for the digital economy or the entire world economy in the future. There's a second good idea. A digital currency, like the dollar, that can move on an Android phone or an iPhone at the speed of light between 8 billion people in order to allow cross-border payments, cross-border remittances, purchases, and the like, and to give an entitlement or access to the dollar to people in Argentina or Cuba or North Korea or Nigeria where they're without. And so there are probably 1 to 2 billion people in the world that have access to the dollar through the 20th century banking system. There are 6 billion people in the world that do not have access to the dollar. They are disenfranchised, they are unbanked, and they are suffering. So there has been a demand for that digital dollar. It manifested itself in the growth of Tether and Circle. That idea, right, looks a little bit degenerate to someone on the Upper East Side of New York City who's a trust fund baby with a JP Morgan account. But if you're living in Nigeria and the banks can't be trusted and the government devalued your currency and you're looking at starving to death, or the same in Venezuela, that dollar looks to you like a lifeline, and that is really critical for you. So the crypto industry, has spread that dollar and it's moved on crypto rails. It's moved on networks like Tron or Ethereum. Unfortunately, it hasn't moved on the Bitcoin Lightning Network. So the idea is a good idea, give billions of people the dollar, right? The execution is a bad execution. Let's basically use unregistered security and centralized crypto networks to give them the dollar. And now you leave someone in Lebanon with a choice. Do I trust Tether and Tron more than I trust the Lebanese government and my Lebanese bank? And of course, in their case, it's a stark choice. We know the government stole my money and currency was devalued and the bank frees my assets. So they're between a rock and a hard place, and they choose the crypto solution to getting the dollar. Now, there's a third good idea, a digital exchange. When you own Apple stock, the bank only lets you trade it when they're awake and they work 20% of the time, from 9:30 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon, Monday through Friday if there's no bank holiday. And if you want to trade Apple stock on Saturday afternoon, they just don't work Saturday. So a digital exchange works 168 hours a week, right? And that's nearly 5 times as much as banking hours. So the idea that you can get the bank to work for you all the time is a big idea. Also, the idea that I could have a digital exchange on my Android phone or my iPhone in my pocket as I travel through Central Africa is also an empowering idea. And finally, a fourth idea is just property rights. If you own Apple stock, a bunch of it, your bank is able to loan that Apple stock out and get a yield on it, but just not for you. You don't, right? So $1 million of assets sitting in a conventional bank is the bank's assets, and they get benefits from it, but you don't get benefits from it. So the 20th century conventional banking system is constructed to work part-time for its own benefit. And the idea of a digital exchange would be you ought to be able to hold your own assets, get the yield on your own assets, trade and transfer your own assets whenever you want, and do it at the speed of light and do it 1,000 times faster and quicker. So that's another innovation. The last innovation is a digital token. It exploded as NFTs in the crypto world. Okay, the idea that's the ethical idea is you're an artist, a musician, and an actor or an athlete, and you wish to monetize your brand, right? Once upon a time, you have music rights, you want to sell the music rights.
Right.
There's a famous David Bowie bonds, where David Bowie sold the bonds that included rights to his music over time to monetize his art. Well, most people can't sell bonds to monetize their brand. So the idea that I could somehow issue a token that monetizes my brand was interesting to hundreds of thousands of creators and artists and celebrities, right? They were very excited about it because, from their point of view, it's Hollywood and the music companies that control me. Once upon a time, Prince changed his name to to an unpronounceable symbol and went by the artist formerly known as a protest against his record label because he felt, he painted slave or wrote slave on his forehead.
Yeah, they want what's theirs.
Right, and so the people want to own their rights. That's the ethical idea that came out of crypto. The execution of the idea was we're going to do it on a centralized, crypto token network, a Solana or an Ethereum or a something. And the problem is those are all unregistered securities, right? And so if you could take those ideas and you could put them on the Bitcoin network, on Lightning. Bitcoin is ethical because it's an asset without an issuer. Lightning is ethical because it is an open protocol, and the fees that run it are Satoshis. And Satoshis are, of course, ethical money. So if you had an open, fair protocol running on an ethical money, and then you gave tokens to creators, and you gave dollars to people in Africa that would otherwise starve, or they're locked out of the world economy without dollars. And if you gave them Bitcoin as the digital scarcity asset, and if you gave them access to these DeFi ideas and exchanges 24/7, 365, but it was ethical, right? Not only, that's the first check, it's got to be ethical. The second check is it's got to be technically sound. Lightning's technically sound. You could support billions of people and do billions of transactions a day, quick and cheap, technically sound. And then third, it's got to be economically sound. You could create a digital commodity that had an inflation rate of 10% a year forever. It's not economically sound to have a continual inflation rate, like Dogecoin has continual inflation. So Bitcoin is economically sound because it's capped scarcity. It's technically sound because it's layered from the base layer, which is optimized for security, to the layer 2, which is optimized for performance and scalability, and enables layer 3 applications. And I think that as we look forward, what we'll say is, well, the first decade of crypto, they were trying to do all these good ideas, but they were doing them with unregistered securities and centralized banks and centralized exchange and those things, and with poor economic principles, right? And they collapsed they either collapsed because they're unethical and the regulators shut them down, or they collapsed because they're technically flawed, right? And they clog up and they're trying to do everything on the base layer, or they collapsed because they're economically unsound. The next generation of the digital economy, digital assets, people will pursue digital exchanges, digital currency, digital commodities, digital tokens, digital securities. They will pursue them, but in an ethically sound, technically sound, economically sound fashion.